Welcome to Homes for Hope interviews. My name is Matt Baer, and I'm the Executive Director of Homes for Hope. Homes for Hope partners with the building industry to invest in underserved families around the world for their holistic flourishing unto the glory of God. We exist to love God and love others. The purpose behind these interviews is to chronicle my journey of learning how land and home ownership, both domestically and internationally, are connected to the complexities of poverty in all its forms. With that as our goal, I'm ecstatic to learn from Yahna Gibson today. With over 25 years of nonprofit management experience, Yahna took on the role of executive director with Emerging Builders. She spent 5 years as an educator at Allen Village School, and prior to that, served as executive director of Habitat for Humanity, Kansas City. Her passion for teaching, housing, and construction melded into the perfect opportunity. Prior to Habitat for Humanity, Yahna served as Director of Development for Mount Carmel Redevelopment Corporation, a community development corporation in Kansas City, Kansas, and 7 years as the Development Director of Niles Home for Children, a nonprofit residential treatment program. Her personal mission is to encourage and empower women to become all that they aspire to be. Yahna is the proud mother of 5 children and the go-go of 6 amazing grandchildren. Thank you so much for joining me today, Yahna. My wife and I will sometimes talk about, we have 4 kids. We'll sometimes talk about what we'll want to be called as grandparents someday. And my wife doesn't like any of the options that exist.
Either. I get it.
And go-go is a great one. So
thank you. Thank you. I was in the same spot. I wasn't ready to be called grandma at, I think he's 11 now. So I was 41. Yeah. And I wasn't ready. And so I refused. And my friends had all the good names. They had Yaya, Mimi. And I was like, I'm just not. So a friend of mine came one day and she called and she says, how's the future go-go doing? And I was like, go-go, what is that? She's like, it means grandma in Africa. I said, that is my name. Wow. And so that's great. It was a hit. And so it fits because I also feel like I'm on the go-go all the time. I am guardian of 4 grandboys, and so their ages 7, 8, 9, and 11.
Wow, and you're busy.
Yes, crazy busy, and crazy being the key word. So trying to learn how to balance my life, raising grandkids, and with the new startup organization, and still having grown kids that, they don't stop needing you just because they're grown. So,
oh man,
yeah.
So that's in my future, huh?
Yeah, so get ready. Get ready, Matt.
Well, that's great. Well, I would love to start off by learning about your spiritual background. How would you describe your spiritual background?
I love Jesus. And for me, that is like the very base of my existence. And it is the thing that keeps me grounded when things seem to go crazy. I believe that he rose from the dead. And I believe that he saved me, and that if it was no one else but me, he would have died to save me. And so my gift that he's given me is to encourage and motivate people with that, and just to believe that he is God. And, with our spiritual journey, Matt, we have these valleys and mountains. And whenever I'm in a valley, that's always the thing that pulls me out. He gently reminds me that he's never left. And so I love him. I love him.
I love that answer. Did you grow up in the church?
I did not. I remember going to church every now and then with my mom. And I want to say it was probably around holidays. And so this sounds terrible, but my ex-husband wouldn't come see me on Wednesdays. And so I couldn't figure out why he didn't. And so I finally asked him, he's like, well, I go to Bible study on Wednesday. And I was like, oh. And so, still wanting to be with him, I was like, well, I want to go. And so I remember the first time I went, Matt, it was so incredible. I sat several rows back from everybody because I didn't know anybody. But I remember that the Spirit of the Lord in Bible study, that day, God showed me he was real. And I remember just sitting there crying the entire time, like, what is this? What is this? And so it was in a Wednesday Bible study that God said, everything you've heard, everything you think you know or whatever, or don't know, I'm here. And so Yeah, never will forget that. So no, started at age 20. Age 20.
That's wonderful. So that kind of serves as the, the foundation from which you have, you know, built your career. Is that accurate to say?
I would
Oh, you,
say absolutely.
mhm.
Absolutely. And it's in everything that I do. And so, I used to, when I was a young Christian, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but we'd say, don't make me put my Jesus on the shelf when you get mad and you ready to fight somebody. And so young as a young Christian, we should say it. And so knowing that the blessing is you can leave him, but he won't leave you.
Amen.
And so that's been beautiful for me, for my life, just through the stuff, divorce and raising small children, and then now raising grandchildren in my career.
Mhm.
Um, Gosh, he's been faithful. He's been good to me. So
Yeah.
I don't complain about a thing.
When we
I
are
do not.
faithless, he is faithful. Absolutely.
Man, yes, absolutely.
Well, I would love for you to describe your journey to becoming the CEO of Co-Build KC and Emerging Builders. Who invested in you along the way? How did you arrive at this position?
So um, I was, man, 19 or 20, I was a little older than that, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was married with small kids and tried to babysit at home. Did not work at all, maybe 3 weeks. And so I started working at a temp agency, and it was a nonprofit consulting firm. And I had never known there was a difference. And so there I learned that um, the YMCA was very different from a Cerner or from a corporation. And we were able to go to the free trainings and just learned a lot there. And so while I was there, I was like, oh, I'm going to be an executive director of a nonprofit. And that was, I think I was 26. But while I was there, I also started going through a divorce. And so a very low time in my life, but a learning. So I met a guy there who we were doing an executive search for this organization, and he was a great guy. And so I was the admin assistant. So I'm the gatekeeper. When you come in, I'm going to get to know you.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so he got hired as executive director of Niles Home for Children. A friend of mine was looking for a job. I called him for her to say, I know this great person. And he was like, oh, I really want to talk to you too. And I was like, oh, okay. Still very low point. So I went to the interview, and everything you're not supposed to do, man, I did. I was crying in the interview because he was such a great guy. And I was just telling him, I don't have a car. And da, da, da. So as we were talking, he goes, well, the positions that he had available, he said, I have another position I haven't advertised for. Would you be interested? He said, do you like to write? Do you like to talk to people? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm a talker, if nothing else.
Uh-huh.
And so it was development director at Niles Home for Children. And so it was my first leadership role. And I learned a very valuable lesson there. My first newsletter, I had 3 typos in it. And he read it, and he called me in the office, and he goes, Yahna, you have typos in your newsletter. And I was like, yeah. And he said, do you want to send it out like this, or do you want to do it over? And I was like, I can do it over. And this is after they were printed in the box, ready to mail out. And he said, sure you can. And so for me, Matt, that was like a critical lesson in leadership development. For me, I've never forgotten it. And I probably need to call him and tell him how impactful that was, to allow me to make mistakes, and that it wasn't the end of the world and I wasn't going to lose my job. And from learning that mistake, that I had the power to correct it and move forward. And he never mentioned that newsletter again. So after being there for 7 years, I had a funder that really burned me on fundraising. He was a
Wait,
very negative.
I'm sorry to interrupt you here. What was his name? I would love for you to
His name was Donald Lee.
Donald Lee. And
Yes.
just I think it was obvious probably to you, the character of the man that you would be working for as he allowed you to cry during the interview and you in that way. Just what an amazing experience that must have been.
And more than that, Matt, I remember I had 3 small kids at the time, and didn't have a car. So he and his wife let me use a car for several months until I was able to get a car. So yeah, and I've seen him through the years, and some of our paths crossed, but not very regularly.
Mhm.
But he's still doing well. He was also a math teacher. So the last I heard, he was teaching math
Mhm.
at the community college. But just a really wonderful guy. I had 2 kids that they were, a college family, but he was a really, really great guy.
And that shapes
Yeah.
you on your path to, because you already knew you wanted to be an executive director someday. So you get to
Yeah.
learn from that experience. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And so after that, the funder broke my spirit, and I was like, I don't want to do fundraising anymore.
Mm.
And so I talked to Mr. Lee about that, and he was like, well, you're doing well in that position. And it was like, I don't think he gets, I can't do it anymore.
Mhm.
And so I started looking for work, and nobody would hire me. I mean, I was like, oh my God. And when I say start looking for work, man, I'm looking for secretary, going back to old skills that I knew I had,
Mhm.
couldn't get a job. And so took a vacation, came back, and had a voicemail from Bishop Sims at Mount Carmel. And he was saying, someone referred you to me as a wonderful fund development person. And I was like, I don't know why they did that, because I'm not doing that anymore. And so he had left a message to call him. And I was like, I'm not calling him because I don't want to talk to him. So I didn't.
Mhm.
So fast forward, a couple weeks passed, and in the height of a very busy day, my phone rang and I just grabbed it. It was Bishop Sims.
Mhm.
And so I was like, how are you, sir? And he was like, I just want to meet with you. And I was like, okay. Because, we were taught too, you don't refuse your elders, especially if they're respectful and he's a man of God. So I was like, okay. So I went and met with him. And also, just at a very low point, was that he asked me the same question you did. Tell me about when you met the Lord.
Mhm.
And so, oh my gosh. And it just brought this huge surge of emotion as I remembered how God has been good to me, because I had gone through a divorce
Mhm.
and had figured out how all this stuff. I didn't know how to do anything when I was newly divorced, because my husband did everything. So just this whole learning, feeling inadequate with these little kids kind of deal. And so ended up going there. And Bishop Sims had an international ministry. And so we were able to go to Africa for 2 weeks on a mission trip. And so I took my 2 oldest daughters at the time. And while I was there, the Lord said, you are to work directly with people. And I was like, okay, all right. And so got back and said to Bishop Sims, sir, could I work in the outreach program, because I'm to work with people? And he was like, oh, you're doing so well in fund development. And I was like, oh my God, here we go again. And so I started looking for work again and again. Nobody will hire me. And then Habitat for Humanity pops up on Nonprofit Connect, and it's a volunteer and family coordinator position. I had just bought a house, Matt, and when I tell you the house that I bought, I still live here, but the guy that lived here was an artist, a good friend of mine. So he had his artwork up everywhere, and so the house was beautiful. So he convinced me to move to the house because I was living with my brother. Well, when he took his artwork down, it was like, oh my God, I want to burn the house. And so I had to get the house done over. It was like this terrible experience of home ownership, but I got it because I had just done it. And so with this family services position, you had to help people do their sweat equity and understand the value of owning a home. And so having gone through that in my cover letter, I put all that in there. It was a crazy cover letter, but it was just a real one. And so my mom at the time was on city council here. And so I called her and I was like, do you know anything about Habitat for Humanity? And she was like, oh yeah, I've been volunteering there for years. And I know the people who founded it, and Linda Warning is on it. Why? So I told her, she's like, well, I'm going to call her. I was like, I don't want you to call her. If I get a job, I want to get it myself. Your parents never pay attention to you. So the next morning she calls me. She's like, well, I called Linda, and she said that she had already received your resume and she wanted to meet with you anyway. And I was like, well, thanks, Mom. So I go to this interview, Matt, and it was 66 applicants. They were on their second round of interviews for their finalists. And my resume came in the last one, and I got the job. And so in that, I knew God is working. I was like, okay, God. And so I was at Habitat for a year and no, 6 months, and the director left. So then they hired someone new, and he goes after 6 months, well, I think you need to be the associate director because you can handle the people stuff and I can do the fundraising. So I was like, okay. And so I did that. And then after another month, he goes, well, you know what? I really don't think I want to be the executive director anymore. I just want to be the development director. So I've gone to the board and I told them that you would be an excellent executive director. And I'm like,
Oh.
okay. And so he goes, aren't you excited? And I'm thinking, no, because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I had an amazing board president. His name was Dave Van Landingham. And he was saved and just this incredible man. I loved him. And I didn't realize how impactful he was until his term was over. But he told me at the beginning, he said, Yahna, we're going to try this. He's like, after 6 months, if you want to go back to family services, you can, or you can keep this. And when I tell you, God said, I gave you this for a purpose, rock it. And so.
Well, he told you that was going to be you back when you were 26, right?
That's it, right? And so then I think at that point, I was 37. And so I had a volunteer, Cindy Patrick, sweet. She said, fake it till you make it, honey. Fake it till you make it. And so I think that's what I did the first year, just learned, just learned and learned and learned. And so after Habitat, the board switched. Habitat being a Christian ministry, the direction of the board was different. And they were going away from that. And so it was time for me to leave. And after 9 years, I left and took some time off because I was pretty burned out by that time because I had a really rough relationship with my board of directors at that point. So took 4 months off and then was like, okay, what am I going to do next? Excuse me. My sister worked at a school. So she's like, oh, they're hiring for this in-school suspension teacher. Do you want to do that? And I was like, well, yeah, if I can do that, I can teach. And so I did that and was like, okay, I'm going to teach. So I taught for 5 years, K through 12. In high school, I taught algebra and math, middle school math, and then ended in elementary. Started in pre-K, was not my gift at all. Was not. Love high school. So did that for 5 years, but was very disappointed in how the education system works and just to see the failure in our students and not to feel like you can't, like the gap is so enormous that you're just swimming in you can't do it. And so I was disheartened and I was like, okay, this is not for me. And so I got my counseling degree. And around the time I finished my counseling degree, I was given guardianship of my grandsons. And then Tate and I met years ago when I was at Habitat with my church. And so Habitat donated a house to the church. Tate was working with Global Orphan Project and they were invested in the house so that we had one meeting and that was our connection. So when we connected this time, he called and said, a friend of mine suggested that you and I meet for coffee. I want to tell you what I'm doing. So he was talking about co-build and I was having conversations with other friends about how do we stem this violence here in Kansas City? There's this sense of hopelessness. How do we do it? And maybe it's work and trying to find an opportunity. So they were both in construction, but they were moving slow. And so when I met with Tate, he said, I just want you to be an advisor at co-build. And I was like, absolutely. And as I listened to him, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And so the advisory council, which I really was like just a picture person on there because I really didn't have a lot of input. They said, well, you need to start a nonprofit, Tate, because you can't really manage teaching apprentices and keeping a client happy. And so Tate had a bad experience at a nonprofit. And so he didn't want to, finally did. And I actually was not the first choice for emerging builders. I was like more just helping because that's what my background was. Went to a meeting with him one day because I didn't have anything to do. Didn't know why I was there, but just went. And they're talking about nonprofit and none of them knew a thing about it. And so they're asking these questions. And so I'm like, oh no, that's da da da. And then I said, oh no. And I was like, okay, God, got it again. And so as I was talking to Tate about who he wanted to lead the organization, her background, she was an amazing social worker. And I was like, that's not the background you need to start a nonprofit. It's very different. It's not in the front right off. It's really doing a lot of legwork. And so after a couple days, he called. He's like, "You're right. Would you consider running it?" And for me, really, Matt, it was a no-brainer because of the flexibility. And I needed that with my grandboys because they had been in foster care for 2.5 years. So I needed to be able to go to doctor's appointments. I needed to be available if they had a meltdown or if I had a meltdown.
Sure.
So it just worked perfectly. And so I serve as the executive director of Emerging Builders, but I'm just on the leadership team at CoBuild.
Okay.
And it often feels like I'm running CoBuild because Tate and I, or our organizations are very intertwined because CoBuild exists to create opportunities for emerging builders. And so we talk daily about, what we're doing and how we're doing it. And so being at Emerging Builders has been a really amazing experience. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for 20 plus years, but I've always gone into existing organizations. And to start one was very new, very challenging. Funding was a beast. And so CoBuild for the first year and a half provided a major chunk of funding for emerging builders out of his profits. So serving women, am I going too fast for you for your questions?
No, this is great.
Okay. I was going to say serving women, Black and other folks of color. And I had someone tell me, the correct term is BIPOC. And I was like, got it. But I still want to say it the way I say it because the emphasis is women and Black people and other people of color as they come along. But it's really about women and Black people. And that's kind of where my heart was anyway, because I see it every day. Again, I've been blessed where I've had a career from my 20s, right? And doing things that I love to do. But I also know a lot of women, young women that are struggling every day, that are that don't know what they want to do because they've always had the opportunity only to work fast food jobs or, working at a temp agency as I started out. So being able to influence and guide folks to say, you know what, try this, just try it. You don't know. It's been incredible. Women have been rock stars in it, like rock stars.
What does Emerging Builders do in partnership with CoBuild?
So what we do is we are a pre-apprentice training program. It's a 10-week model where we do 4 days on the job training and construction with a CoBuild site. That's where the CoBuild piece comes in. So CoBuild goes out, they get the contract and the work. And so they provide the opportunity for emerging builders to work on a live job site where they are aware of scheduling, budgeting, lose materials, waste materials, how it impacts the budget. And so on Fridays, and this is the day thing, Matt, that sets us apart, in my opinion. On Fridays, we have classroom time. And the Friday afternoons, it's construction where, you're in the classroom because we learn quickly. You don't want to keep wasting materials. You let people learn how to do something in the classroom before they go on the job. But on Friday mornings, we do financial literacy. And we partner with a group called CHESS, Credit Homeownership Empowerment Services. Oh. And they have a person on staff that does our financial literacy through Money Smart curriculum, free of charge. So they do that for an hour. And then we have a therapist. His name is Reggie Jackson with Satori Counseling. And Reggie came on initially to do essential skills, how to communicate. So after a couple of weeks, he goes, Yahna, they talking about some deep stuff in here. Can I do a little psychotherapy? And I was like, absolutely. Because I was nervous initially, Matt, because Black people, we don't go to therapy for real. And so I felt like if we thrust that on them, how are they going to respond to that? Are they going to want to do it? Or are they not? And they were coming out like, oh my God, I need therapy. I need therapy. But he ran the sessions as such that when they came out, they each had a takeaway that they could work on for the next week. So he did a phenomenal job with that. So this year, we're adding a couple of components to that. We're working with a local pastor to teach entrepreneurs, to teach the entrepreneurial mindset. So we're looking at a couple of curriculums for that. One's called Ice House, and there's one called Jobs for Life. So he's familiar with both. So he'll be implementing that. And then we're also looking at a leadership, we've added a leadership component because oftentimes I didn't know I was a leader. I was easing through life, just doing what came to me, um, and had natural leadership abilities. But then I was thrust into that because God had a plan for my life. And so I really feel like emerging builders can be that, is that for some folks to take them through and help them understand that you're much more than you think you are.
Mhm.
And so that leadership piece is for them to understand their leadership style and how it works for them. So those are the four key components that we'll have this year, as we go forward, including the construction piece.
I love this model because you're addressing what's going on in their lives, not just materially, but holistically in all areas
Yes.
of life. And
Yes.
that's very similar to our model at Hope, that we're addressing poverty not just materially, but socially, personally, spiritually as well. Um,
Wonderful.
and my my question for you is, what are you hoping to build here? Do you have visions of expanding this program to other areas of the country? Because when I first learned about this, I was like, this is amazing. I learned about it from Tate in one of the coffee shops that you guys remodeled,
Okay.
and uh, I've talked about this to some other consultants and things that I've networked with around the country, and people are excited about this idea. So, do you have plans of growing this outside of Kansas City, or do you?
We
Uh,
do. My first goal, it's been a year and a half.
mhm,
And so for me, I want to be able to do it well before we talk about that. We've got an
That's wise.
amazing partnership this year with Kansas Division of Children and Families. Our
Mhm,
first cohort is going to be kids that are aging out of foster care.
mm,
And so trying to trying the different demographics, the different groups of folks, but wanting to get the program nailed. One of the things we learned, one of the things that I think is very important, is to listen to the people that go through the program.
mhm,
And so one of the things that came out of the program, the feedback was, um, you're not giving us what you promised. So I was like, okay, what do you mean? She's like, well, you say we're going to touch construction, various facets of it, but we're not. When you go to a house, you're really following the schedule of the house. And I was
mm,
like, okay, that's correct. So what we're adding this year, in addition to the project base, is a trades based. And so we have 5 to 6 trades that we're going to do like an immersion in
mhm,
there. So it'll be, of course, general labor and demo, because you have to start that, but it'll be drywall, how to
mhm,
mud and tape. So we'll do that for a week or two. Painting, all the ins and outs of that. We're hoping to partner with the Housing Authority and Sherwin Williams on that.
mm.
And then flooring, not just carpet, but also the vinyl flooring, the interlocking stuff, all of that they're doing now.
Yeah.
Flat work, how to make curbs and sidewalks. It's a huge field. And I met with the gentleman
Wow.
that gets all of the city contracts, and he's like, I never have enough people. And so it's like, hello, we can
Yeah.
help you with that. So it's how to do that, and patios, of course, with that. And then property maintenance.
Mm,
How do you, and that can translate to just being able to take care of your house,
mhm,
right? But there are a number of folks that live in substandard housing. Imagine if a mom or a dad got the skill set to do property maintenance and could go get a job at an apartment complex where housing is included in that, right? And so
yeah.
really start trying to think, how do we, because we've tossed around a lot of models like, okay, well, we'll do this and we'll do a registered apprenticeship program. And it's like, you know what, that's 2 years. And that's, we want people to be able to change their life, right? So that's where the immersive piece come in. Because if you can paint for a week and do well and get all your tools, you can be an entrepreneur. You can
Mhm,
do that on the side. You
sure.
can get one of these jobs. The concrete guys, the contracts that he has, they're prevailing wage. You start at $42 an hour. So imagine starting here at $12 an hour, where you go through a training program where you get basic language,
Mhm,
basic skill set that you can go in and you can change your life.
yeah.
And it doesn't have to take forever to do it. It's a willingness. So we talk about a will and a skill. The
Mhm,
will to do it, they
I
come
like that.
without the skill. And how do we help them get that?
It's amazing.
Thank you.
um, so I'm curious, how workforce development, providing opportunities in the building industry for women, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, how all of that addresses the complex issue of generational poverty. You were just kind of hitting on it a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's a great question, because construction is a white man's world, has been and will always be. And so when Tate and I first started talking about this model,
it's also
it was
generational
like,
too. It gets handed down, right?
Absolutely. How do we disrupt that? Because Tate started as a kid, because his dad did it and his granddad did it. And so when you look at those opportunities, they're teaching them at a young age. And then they have the network, right? So my son graduated from college and he's in construction management. I'm gonna call him a buddy and he's gonna give him a job. And so whether he's, I was gonna say, an idiot or not, and I don't mean it like that, but if he doesn't have the skill set or not, the network is there. And so they're going to be successful because it's given to them. And I don't mean that derogatorily, it just is. And so they have it set up where they can continue to help each other. And we don't. And as Black people, we do a terrible job at it. That's to be quite honest. But I think what this does is, how do we disrupt that? Matt, the average age, I think, of people in construction is 55. So they're going to be retiring. They have 5 folks.
Wow.
I read a Kansas City disparity study. For every 5 people that retire, they're only replacing with 1 person, right? So there's a huge gap. Women, 25 to 34 years old, biggest, the largest gap of people living below poverty. And so how come we can't marry the two? So if we can help them, and I hate to say this too, but single moms are running the households now, right? So if we can get a mom focused and give her a trade where she can change the trajectory of her children's life, and then her kids already see mom works hard, she's working 2 or 3 jobs, but now she can work 1. Now she can be at home. Now she can help with schoolwork. Now we can live in a place that's not substandard. You know, my mom, when I was a kid, we moved every year. I went to the same school maybe twice in my lifetime, and I never understood it. I asked my mom, I was like, why did we move every year? Because I hate moving now, Matt. I will stay where I am till the house burned down. And she said, because it was substandard housing. And I didn't understand it as a kid, because they all look fine to me, you know, but she understood. And so that stayed with me, as well as learning that as an adult, that's what we see. I had kids, and I call them kids because they're younger than me, in the program that were homeless, or that a lady lived paying $1,000 a month for a house that the gas doesn't work. And the landlord lost the house because he wasn't paying his part of it. So then she has to figure out where she can live. So those are things, and I focus on women because, of course, I am one, but because we typically are left with the responsibility of taking care of our families. And if we're down, I've been depressed. I've been in a situation where I didn't think I knew how things were going to work out. And I had a support system, thank God. People around me saying, Yahna, come on, or I got you. And some don't. And so that's the other thing that Emerging Builders attempts to do, is to provide this supportive system so that we have, if you are hungry and you need food, we can give you a gift card for that. If you need gas, we can give you a gift. We can help you with those things, and then giving you this support system, this safety net, that no, we're not creating a utopia, right? Because everything that we're talking about, it still goes on out there. But how do you deal with it? How do you learn how to deal with conflict? How do you learn how to deal with communicating with peers who may be nasty to you? You know what I'm saying? So that you don't just walk off your job and the cycle continues, because that's what occurs. It's like we get fed up, we get tired, we're like, forget it. And then we leave, and then we're back to where we started. So our goal is to change that cycle, to disrupt the workforce development. We need mental health therapy. We need to learn how to deal with our stuff, because we all have it. And what we've done is that we've not. And so we carry it with us, and then we explode, and then we raise dysfunctional children who don't know how to deal with it either. And we have to stop that. And so that's what we attempt to do here.
The same thing is true internationally. About 80% of the people that we serve around the world are women who are responsible for their children, and they're
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, and they have to think of something to take care
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
So that's amazing that you're thinking through that again holistically and addressing things that way. Another thing I'm curious is, according to your expertise, how do land and home ownership affect the complex issue of poverty?
For my kids, for me growing up, I always said, and I mean, as a kid, man, I'm going to have a house, one, for stability.
Mhm.
I don't want my kids to have to do this. Because again, I have an aversion to moving, you wouldn't believe, from an office space to anywhere. It scarred me. But it was the stability of having something that's yours, that you can come home to. And it didn't matter if it wasn't all put together and all that, but it was ours, and you could come home. Safety, right? Having some place to come that's yours. That was the first thing. And then understanding through the years, Matt, that I don't understand nothing, and that there's this whole world out there of how to create wealth, and that I know nothing about. And so as I'm getting with learning this language, and how real estate is the thing that begins to stabilize you, and it can work for you and not against you.
Mhm.
But for families, it's like to have your own home first, to be able to teach your children about home ownership and why it's important versus renting. And I'm gonna tell you this too, though. I don't believe everybody should be a homeowner,
Mhm.
because I believe some people's mentality is not such that it should happen. And I might be one of those people, man. But anyway, um, there's a responsibility in it that, if you don't take it seriously, it you lose your house anyway. So there's, with a home, it's the stability of it, but it's also, there's a learning curve there that you haven't had in renting. How do you take care of your house? Paying your taxes, um, doing repairs every year, understanding that you're going to have to do repairs every year because it's a house made by a man, and that it's not magically going to repair itself. So those kinds of things. And then you begin to build on that. So this year is critical for me and my kids. And so my oldest daughter is 33 or 34. She might be 33. I don't remember. But we've talked about, okay, this year is a game changing year for us. How do we take this? So it's like, I need to get a home equity line of credit so that we can begin to buy another house and begin to do it, get this house fixed up, put it on Section 8, then I can move. And then that money pays for the next thing. So helping them understand that you have something of value now, that it's not just a house, it's yours. So you always, and I said to my kids, I was like, the reality of it is if I go someplace and don't like it, I'll put the tenant out and I can always come back home, right? But being able to do that and say that it's mine, and that sense of ownership is huge, because most of us don't. When we talk about Black people again, it's the car. We go get a nice car and we don't have a place to live. And it's helping them understand that the property, owning something, a house that appreciates in value, begins to create the wealth that you need.
And you were bringing this out before as well. Kids learn, and they're very observant, and they watch us. And so as they see their mom being successful and able to, learn a skill or have their own business, and then
Absolutely.
own a home, that's what they're learning. And they'll take that into the next. They'll learn, first of all, how to do that.
Yeah.
And they'll learn that it's possible for my
That's so
life.
key.
Mm-hmm.
Possible.
Mm-hmm.
That it's possible. And then imagine, so for me, I have very bright children.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if I can do what I've accomplished, and I look at them, man, and they're all blessed, very bright. Why are we not utilizing the skills and the talents that God has given us?
Mm-hmm.
And so, because all things are possible, right? Mm-hmm. And so when a kid gets that, when they see their mom starting a business, their natural inclination is, how do I help her?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you're learning that. But then we have to put the supportive tools in place for them to have a successful business.
Mhm.
And that's, we're looking to partner with the group now that's starting such a thing. And so we have this grant outstanding with Kaufman where emerging builders would provide access to entrepreneurs, and they would support them with back-end support services like legal, HR, accounting, and help them understand how to make their business more sound. And they will give them 40 hours of support for free, but help them put those things in place so that they can, when the 40 hours are up, they still have it in place to move forward. Those are the kind of supportive services we need. And it's specifically for disadvantaged business owners, which tie mostly to minorities or people of color who don't have, again, have the support services or systems in place to help them be successful.
And all of that. So the hard work that you're talking about, these opportunities that you're lining up for people, and the ability to have success and see success, and all of that works together toward restoring dignity and,
Yes,
and self-image, and that passes on generationally as well.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have two more questions. I'm curious, what gives you hope, both in your work, in your life, as you're considering the people that you're working with? What gives you hope?
I would say people. Right? I am like such a people person, Matt. When I see someone, like the light bulb comes on, or they get it, or like someone that can't read a tech measure, and then they get it. And I had a emerging builder who was 55 years old, female, lived in public housing all her life. And Matt didn't think she could do anything. And I remember going on the job site one day, and her name is Regina. And Regina was helping build a fence. And she had tears in her eyes. And she was like, Miss Yahna, I did that right there. I did that thing. I did that. And so with the tears in her eyes, it brought tears to my eyes because I said, she's 55 and all her life, she's been taught that she had no value, no worth. And that because you live in public housing, you're worth $12 an hour. And so now she's like, I'm not going back. She gets that she can do anything. That is hopeful for me. That helps me understand that we can do this, and that what we're doing is well and good, and that we are helping people make different decisions about their life. And so that interfacing is hopeful for me. It's like we're on the right path, God. And when it looks bleak, one of them will call you. I have one kid, she calls me every day. She left the program. She was in our first program in 2019, junior in high school. She's went to college for construction management, but just going through life. And she'll call, Mama, and she'll say, how you doing? And so if she's hungry or whatever, she'll be like, I need a small favor. Can you cash up? Nothing major. But then she texted me one day, Matt, and said, if you ever need somebody to talk to, you can call me. Blew me away. Just brought tears to my eyes. Because oftentimes people look at the provider and they feel like they don't need nothing. They're okay. And she saw just a glimpse from a 19-year-old kid. I know you have rough days. And so she's hope for me. Yeah. So it's the
Awesome.
people. Yeah.
All right. Well, my last question is, who else should I talk to?
So I'm going to text you this name, but there's a guy named Terrell Jolly.
Okay. And
Terrell is actually, he and his partner, Doug. So I don't know if you want to do both of them, but they're both dynamic guys. They're doing housing in Kansas City. And Terrell is a man of faith, dad, married, great guy. But we're actually going to be doing some work with them. And I had a chance to meet Terrell last year because he was very excited about workforce engagement too, and how can they help us, but just a dynamic guy. So he and his partner are certainly a group to talk to. That's who came to mind right away. But there are other folks out here doing incredible work. And so I'll get some names for you, but
Sounds
they
great.
will be my first group. Yep.
You guys also use alternative materials, right, in your construction?
Well, we're doing our first new build and our first net zero house.
Wow.
So yes, there are alternative things in there, Matt, and alternative. So that's the conversation that we're excited about going forward in terms of the affordable housing, as well as energy efficiency. And this group, um, Climate Action KC, which is a regional cohort of elected officials that are really passionate about decreasing greenhouse emissions. They're the guy that's over that is the mayor of Roland Park, and he's also the key to this business exchange for nonprofits. He'd be another good person to connect with. His name is Mike Kelly, and I'll get his information to you too. But it's some great stuff happening here from people that you wouldn't really expect to be happening. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for
Thank
joining me
you.
today. To learn more about all we talked about today, please check out the links to Emerging Builders and Co-Build in the description. And also, if you would like to be alerted to when future episodes of Homes for Hope interviews are posted, please feel free to like this video, subscribe to our channel. Soli Deo Gloria. Thanks, Yahna.
Thank you.